Hello and welcome to Supplement, your weekly dose of readings from EPW Postscript. On this new podcast, we will invite authors to read out their work published in the journal. This week, we have Tapas Mitra, an architect, academic, and artist. He teaches urban design at the School of Planning and Architecture in Bhopal. And now, Tapas Mitra.
Meeting Lautrec in Chicago. From the time I knew about him in school and pronounced his name in my bad French, only to be corrected by a close friend's sister who dabbled in art and learned French at the Alliance Francaise, Toulouse-Lautrec was my hero. The torso of a man sitting on a child's legs, a man naturally quiet and serious, but high on absinthe all the time, and the official artist of the most famous cabaret in Paris, perpetually obsessed with prostitutes, an outsider in a world centered around luminous Parisian evenings. An equal enigma could not possibly exist in the mind of a boy who was learning to apply color on paper. Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec and his works have been etched in my mind's gallery since then. In July 2017, I was invited to deliver a lecture at the 8th Urban Sketches Symposium in Chicago. Urban Sketches is a global community of artists who, as part of the community's mandate, sketch on location. It is an unwritten rule that a lecture delivered at a specific location should have some local references to make it chatty and relate to the audience. I knew that the renowned Impressionist and Post Impressionist collection of the Art Institute of Chicago. I also knew about the East Asian collection and Japanese collection of Frank Lloyd Wright at the museum, but I needed to be thorough this time. By the second day of my stay, we had already done a sketch crawl, meaning sketching on location, a term made a part of art vocabulary by the community, which was at the Robbie House, the iconic residence designed by Wright in 1909. I then decided to cross check my virtual walk through the museum with a real visit to see the pieces I was going to mention in a lecture. I knew Georges Seurat's A Sunday Afternoon on La Grande Chat, most representative of its style and on the bucket list of every visitor, would be there but could not locate the pen and ink Minotaur of Pablo Picasso. It must be off view, I thought. Or was it my mistake in not locating it? Distracted, I moved into the Impressionist gallery and stood mesmerized in front of Pierre Renoir's Two Sisters. The freshness of the treatment till date, the luminance and the stillness, I thought, surpassed his more famous party scenes that celebrated the exuberance of the youthful spirit. A painter of sensuous afternoons and evenings, that's how Renoir remains in personal gallery. I was looking at the self portrait of the artist and thinking about this assessment absent mindedly while recalling his evening scenes of merriment and the visuals of wonderfully rendered gaslights of Parisian streets, when suddenly across the hallway and beyond other paintings, like a bolt of lightning, I was struck by At the Moulin Rouge by Lautrec. I instantly knew that my homework was grossly unfinished. However, before I could rebuke myself, I was running across the hall towards the canvas. For a while I was dumbstruck. How could it be there? Hadn't I seen it at the Musée d'Orsay or the Museum of Modern Art, MoMA at New York City? How could I make this mistake of not noting that the Moulin Rouge was here, though Trek's most iconic work was in Chicago? I was disgusted at my callousness, but was alone and had no one to relate this quote unquote discovery to. At that moment, all I knew was that I stood dumbfounded in front of the canvas, looking at the fleeting face of the heavily made up May Milton, who was an English dancer and visited Paris, and whom Lautrec painted in his paintings and posters he designed for the Moulin Rouge, rendered here in neon grey on the right side of the canvas, almost exiting it. The group of merry men and women at the center and far into the canvas, the solitary figure of the little man in the crowd, Lautrec himself. The volume on Lautrec in Marshall Cavendish collection of great artists, a second-hand copy of which I bought from the streets of Calcutta as a teenager, never ceased to surprise me for the paradoxical nature of the artist's subjects and treatments. The thin paperback with a Moulin Rouge poster on the cover, to anyone unacquainted, seemed like a comic book until they discover in the inner pages the melancholy side profile of the laundress or the hangover, the painting of the solitary girl sitting at a table with a glass and a half finished wine bottle. On my next trip to Paris, during a short stay at Montmartre, I quietly went out early in the morning to catch a glimpse of this bohemian female figure at a roadside bar in Pigalle, the red light area, only to discover that the entire district had gone into a deep slumber a few hours back. On the third or fourth floor of a bleak house on the street was an elderly woman lazily pulling the window shutters, and the scavengers had started to clear the beer bottles from the pavements. Lautrec's heady mix of glitz and low life looked shabby, perhaps too proud even in its present state of slumber, unrepentant, and in no earthly urge to exhibit itself like him. And why not, I thought. In the preface to his memoir, Pablo Neruda writes, quote, "The poet gives us a gallery full of ghosts shaken by the fire and darkness of his time." End quote. If we extend this marvelous metaphor of the gallery beyond the decisive moments of a poet's life and times, we may want to believe that all of us possess an ever expanding gallery within us, a permanent one, where we keep on adding material from when we were little children. Some of these materials or memories are so intrinsically us, representative of what we essentially are, that we get immensely perplexed when we see them elsewhere. These memories, we believe, belong to us so entirely that they could not possibly have been at any other place. When I was caught unawares with Lautrec's at the Moulin Rouge in the Art Institute of Chicago, I was taken aback by the presence of the too familiar, since I keep seeing it every once in a while in my very own permanent gallery.
That's it for today. For more episodes, check out epw.in/engage or search for Supplement wherever you get your podcasts. To experience all that EPW has to offer, head to epw.in and subscribe today. Our EPW Engage team is Divya Jyoti, Priya Mathur, Akanksha Padi, and Tia Singh. And this is Johan saying bye-bye and see you next week.